EQ Video Tip. I'm your host, Eric Forsetter, and as always, I'm so excited for you to join us for another terrific show. Before we jump into this week's tip, let's review the goals of EQ Video Tip. What's on tap for this week? Well, we've got a terrific show, and it comes to us from Nick Hobson, who's going to talk about a Harvard study that reveals one thing that humans do that make them happy. So why do we do the complete opposite? It's a great question. So what's that one thing? Well, we'll get into that in a second, but there's two things that Harvard research talks about that make us happy or make us predisposed to happiness. One of the first things we'll get into right after this. Tip number one. So what are those two things we were just talking about? Well, one of the first things is genetics. Sometimes we're just predisposed to be happier than others. So I'm sure people are saying, well, what if I'm not predisposed that way? Don't worry, we'll have a tip for that in a second. But the other thing is the right circumstance, the right time. Those things matter as well. Now, the right circumstance with the right predisposition of genetically being happy will really make you happy, but the wrong circumstances could lead you the other way. There's a way to get past all this, and this is what we're going to talk about in the next tip right now. Tip number two. No woman or man is an island for that matter. And the Harvard study on adult development that was studied from 1938 till the present actually came out and said that personal connections create mental and emotional stimulation. And those things are automatic mood boosters as opposed to isolation, which is a mood buster. What does that mean? We need to connect more. Think about during the pandemic, you're at home alone or working at home, not having those interactions with other people, your mood was down as opposed to up when you're in the office or when you're interacting with people in social gatherings, social events. So tip number two is get out and don't be an island. Tip number three, technology is getting in the way of our genes. What does that mean? Well, we have these smartphones which don't make us too smart for that matter. And so what happens? Instead of talking with people, we text them. Instead of looking at people, we send them a note or an email. What we need to do is get out more and interact with other people. When you're at an event with someone, put the phone away as opposed to looking at it. Make sure you're interacting. It will increase your happiness. Our last tip. Think about this. Back in the prehistoric ages, people all lived together. Were they happier? Probably, but they were all together and interacting. As today, we live alone, or we live with one person, or we're isolated because we have a computer, a cell phone, a tablet that allows us to interact without really interacting. Think about that when you're trying to figure out how to break out of a rut or what you need to bring out a little more happiness in yourself as well, because we were built actually to be together as opposed to being alone. Thanks again for watching this week's EQ video tip. We hope you enjoyed it. Here's a quick recap of what we went through. So that concludes our EQ video tip for today. Try incorporating some of these tips into your daily routine. But remember, use what works best for you and personalize it for yourself. Thank you always to our great research team for providing us with some great tips today. As always on EQ Video Tip, we want to end with gratitude. So thank you for watching. We really appreciate it. Here are some resources that you can use if you want more information on EQ going forward. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thank you.